5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast. This is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe, learning from their stories and experiences as we interview overlanders from places like Australia, Africa, the Americas, Portugal, and today we are back in South Africa. Well, virtually. So buckle up and get ready for more adventure. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa. This is part 2 with Carla of Blue Sky Society.
Last week, we learned the basic requirements for overlanding in South Africa to setting up your cooking/kitchen setup. We learned about a pokie?
I'm going to say pookie.
A pokie.
A pokey.
A cast iron pot.
Yep.
So, if you've not already listened to part 1, do yourself a favor, get caught up, jump back an episode, and then immediately return to episode 2. This is a good one.
This week, you will want to buckle up as we cover a lot more details on Carla's expeditions, how you can get involved, and fascinating information on the wildlife conservation projects Carla is involved in and shares with all of us.
Are you ready?
More than ready. What life lessons has Africa taught you?
Oh, so many. Africa's, I like to call her Mamma Afrika. Obviously, every single day, everyone deals with challenges, and Mamma Afrika has taught me to deal with life's daily challenges with a bit of a sense of humor, because no matter how much you plan and how many spreadsheets you have, if she decides today that you're not going on that road or something's happening, as I say, you've always got to have a plan B. And she also teaches you how to be patient and always to be mindful and respectful when you're in other people's countries. I've learned that. You've just got to be aware of where you are, and also of the people that you're traveling with. One of the lessons that I've learned is to be respectful, and when you're in such a confined space, you're sharing the road together, you're camping, it can get a little bit tense, or people get exhausted. It's quite an emotional roller coaster sometimes, and it teaches you. I think travel is the best school in the whole wide world, because it teaches you how to respect each other, like I said, and it also teaches you how to let certain things go. I often find that when you're back in the city, you panic about certain things, but when you're out on expedition or traveling in Africa, you kind of more aware of other people's feelings and emotions, and you do let things go. She's also taught me how to live completely in the moment, because there's nothing worse than rushing from A to B and then you're missing half of what's going on around you. But Africa is an incredible place. It gets into your heart and your mind and your soul, and it stays there forever, believe you me. And obviously driving Dora as well, it's taught me how to slow down. We kind of seem to be stuck on this treadmill of life, and things are just so fast with technology, and we're living in a society that's ruled by technology and instant gratification. So I love it when I go out there and there's no signal or there's no access to cell phones, and you actually have to talk to people. Like, you've got to spend 7 hours in a car with somebody. You actually talk to them and you get to know people. I mean, I've had some of my people that have come with me on these trips, they've said, when you spend 6-7 hours in a car with somebody, you they've said to me, so many of my friends don't even know this about me, but you kind of share things. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the fresh air. I don't know. Or the beautiful surroundings.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that could be.
Yeah.
So, Carla, road stories are always a favorite, so that's a really good segue. What are one or two of your favorite experiences on the road?
I'm very blessed to have many stories, but two that I'd love to share with you was in my 2016 Elephant Ignite expedition. We got to collar elephants, but there was a place in Kenya, it was called Savo, and there was an elephant cow, female elephant, that was a victim of human-wildlife conflict, and she'd been speared in the side of her body, and her health was deteriorating, and she had stopped eating and drinking, and she was basically dying. And they called us in. We were staying just down the road, and there's the Kenyan Wildlife Services and the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. They basically tracked her down, and they had to track her down through thick bush. They had to dart her so that she fell, and then we had to turn her over because she fell on the wrong side, so she fell on her wound. And then it was just so amazing seeing how quickly these guys worked, and how, I mean, obviously the animals' protection and health is always a priority. But there was something truly special about, and then she got up after they administered the antidote, and she walked back into the bush to go and find her friends as if nothing had happened. And there was something so special being a part of actually saving an animal's life. I don't know, it was something I'll never forget. We also got to save, when we were in Kenya again, we were in the Samburu, which is in northern Kenya, and there was a little 18-month elephant calf, and her mother was a victim of poaching, and she was still milk dependent, and elephants have got the most incredible bond, the mothers with their children, and they kind of like the mother will touch a calf like every 2 to 3 minutes, so there's this constant bond. And because this baby was still milk dependent, the herd had moved off because they realized that the mom was dead, but the baby kept on trying to go back to her mom because she obviously needed to get milk. And the guys from Save the Elephants Foundation, they tracked her for about 3 hours. They eventually found her, and they had a helicopter. They had to put her in a helicopter, but she was so big that they had to take the doors off the helicopter, but they put her back in the helicopter. They eventually strapped her in, and then they took her to one of the orphanages, the elephant orphanages, because I don't know if you know, but an elephant orphan is probably one of the most difficult animals to rehabilitate because they're such sensitive beings. They can literally die from a broken heart. And being a part of that was just a memory that will stay with me for the rest of my life. It was very special.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that they were that socially dependent. Is that the right way to say it?
Yes. They're very, especially, I mean, obviously the bull elephants, the men are more solitary, but the females, that's why my first expedition was called, the Elephant Ignite expedition, and it was focusing on elephants because the matriarch obviously leads a herd, but she's got an incredible support system with her sisters and the older elephants. They rely on each other and protect each other. And it's we as humans can learn so much from elephants. They're just amazing, empathetic, very clever animals. And I mean, they're sensitive. I mean, they're individual characters, and they're fascinating. They fascinate me.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. What about baboons? How do you deal with those guys?
Oh, they are a problem. They are such a problem. They are so cheeky and so brave. I mean, we've had 2 incidences, like the last expedition with Emily, she can tell you. We literally were on guard. Whoever was on cooking duty was like on guard, and then there was somebody standing there next to you, and they're not scared of women. Somehow they know the difference between a man and a woman, and if you as a female go up to them to try and chase them away, they don't run far. But they're so cheeky. They watch you, and like you can literally turn your back. You can be standing right next to like a packet of rolls or rusks or whatever it is, you literally turn your back and they will jump, like literally dash in there, grab whatever you can, and then they run off. I mean, we managed to keep them at bay for most of the time, but they eventually got one of our toilet rolls, and he sat there and literally scattered bit into the toilet roll, and there were like pieces of paper all over the place when he realized it wasn't food. And so we had to go and pick it up. As conservationists, we had to go and pick up these pieces of toilet paper all over the bush. But yeah, they're bad. Hey, they can get very bad in places. It's also learned behavior. They're clever. Hey, they can open zips in tents. There's some places you'll go to a campsite and they'll say, you know, just the baboons have learned to open zips. Don't leave food in your tents because they can open zips, or they even go as far as opening doors and windows. They're bad. They're a pain. But yeah, as I say, they're part of the nature, and we've taught them. They've learned from humans that there's food, so it's a bit of a problem.
True.
And also they've got the biggest fangs as well. So you do not want to take a bite from a baboon. Yeah, no, they're scary. If the thing comes running at you with fangs and mouth open, you kind of hand your food over and say, okay, there you go. You don't want to fight with them. No, definitely not.
I don't think I've seen Chris's eyes get so big before right at that moment.
No, they're hectic. They're hectic. And there's so many of them as well. So, yeah, anyway.
That's crazy. Have you ever had like a lion come into your camp or anything like that?
Yes, on the last expedition. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, hey? And like, you know, when I was in my little pop-up tent. It was like a tiny little tent. And I was a little bit away from the rest of the crew. And I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you know your brain can really play with you when you're in the middle of the wilderness. I mean, everything sounds like it's right in your tent, or that there's like something big outside, and when everything's so quiet, and I just had a feeling that something was there. And the next day when we woke up, one of the ladies actually went to the loo at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then she was walking around the camp at the same time. And then the next day, the guide that we were going on a walking trail, and the guy came maybe like about 20, 30 meters from where my tent was. The guy was like, oh, look, yeah, fresh lion tracks. I'm like, oh, my word. Yeah. But they apparently they say, whoever they may be, is that the elephants and the lions and the hyenas, even if you're in a little tent, they see it as a form, like a rock or something. So they say that you're safe in your tent, but yeah, it's always a concern. Yeah.
So that's truly sent your gut intuition into motion.
Oh, yeah. I did it. I promise you, when you just get that feeling, and I just knew something was there, and then I was like, okay, brain, you're being silly now, because my brain is like a flippin' troop of monkeys sometimes, especially at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like, go back to sleep, put a pillow over your head, go back to sleep. And then the next morning it's like, oh, there was a lion. I was right.
What are some of the questions you get asked on a daily basis?
Oh, Lisa, we get asked daily, where are the men, especially when it's an all-female expedition, because Africa is still not used to women being out there. It's changing a lot. I've seen it change over the last couple of years. I get asked a lot if we had like big, how is it with only females? I don't know if people are expecting us to have these big cat fights or, a group of females driving together, but it's the opposite. I've never been as close as I am. They become sisters because we don't have a support system out there, so you only have each other. And like I said just now, you kind of let the small things go and you talk to each other because you're on the road for 7-8 hours. But we were often asked, did you fight? And I was like, no, we didn't. You obviously have your normal irritations like you would with your partner or your husband, or, people do irritate each other when you're in a long, in the car for a long period of time. But you kind of get over it. And then also some of the other ones I was asked is like, what do you do if you get a puncture? You change the tire. They look at you like like you're an alien because you're a lady, you can't change a tire. I mean, I know it is a bit of a challenge because the tires are so heavy, but you do make a plan. And then another one was we were in Mana Pools in Zimbabwe, and like 3 vehicles in a row, and this random person came up to us, and they were like, where are you from? It's like, we're like from South Africa. And they were like standing at our vehicles. They were like, how did you get here? And, I get sarcastic. I'm like, oh, no, we teleported, We've only got 3 vehicles.
Awesome.
I don't know what they think. And then also as well, but did you know that you had to cross a border? I mean, like, hello, you're going into another country. Of course you're going to cross the border, But people are generally kind. And I think sometimes they just don't know what to say to you because it's just something different, a group of females. So I've often said to them, would you ask us the same question if you're a group of guys? And they were like, no, we wouldn't. I was like, okay, well, there you go. But I normally explain it to them. And once you explain what we're doing, they're very kind and very supportive. So, yeah, as I say, people are very kind out there. They're very helpful.
That's good.
What are some of the daily challenges you face?
There are quite a lot of challenges. So you've got your physical challenges. Often when we're driving, there's like water crossings and sand driving and 4x4ing. If there is a puncture, the tires are very heavy. If there's a breakdown, I'm not mechanical. I'm a mechanic. So you kind of got to try and figure it out. But when we were in Malawi in 2016, 3 of us, Isabel, myself, and Bronwyn, we spent a morning at a mechanic's shop learning how to change air filters and oil filters and all that fun stuff. So, and it actually came in handy somewhere, further along during the expedition. But so you've got those physical challenges. But as I say, people normally stop. I mean, there's so many people traveling out there, and you like-minded people are normally kinder than people when you're living. I mean, your neighbor, you might not talk to your neighbor, but when you're out in Africa, you kind of talk to people. I don't know what's wrong with the world, but we seem to be more approachable when you're out there. We also like chatting to some of the organizations, because we do go and see organizations along the way, and we went to go and see the Chobe Angels. They are the first female guiding team in Botswana, and some of their challenges that they've physically been assaulted by men because they don't believe that they should be there. And so you hear about these physical challenges, but they kind of have stuck it out. And you feel so proud. You've obviously got dust, lots of dust out there, sometimes lots of mud, corrugated roads, long hours of traveling, and then obviously, keeping the crew safe. That's always a priority. Then you've got your emotional challenges. A lot of the people that we go and see, you get to hear their stories, and you sometimes sit there in awe, and you can't believe the circumstances that these people are going through, and they are still there because they've got a passion or a calling, and a calling to protect our wildlife. And it kind of makes you feel very humble that you're complaining about minuscule things in the city life, but when you go out there, you hear about serious, real challenges. And it's also quite an emotional roller coaster because you're hearing about the human-wildlife conflict, which basically is because the human population is getting bigger and bigger, animals and humans are left competing for land, for food, and for water, and their space is getting smaller and smaller. So you've got these conflict situations where you've got people being killed by elephants, or people killing elephants because they're going and raiding their crops, which is their only form of survival, their income. You've got the lions jumping over fences to go and kill people's goats because they're opportunist animals. And so you can understand it from both sides, but it's a very emotional thing where you see how these poor animals brutally get murdered and killed. It's very emotional. And then obviously when we were traveling in Kenya, we got to meet Sudan, who was the last male northern white rhino. He sadly passed away last year, and he was the last of his species. And we all felt so disappointed and emotional, disappointed in the human race that we had allowed this to happen to him on our watch. But it was when you're looking extinction in the eye, it's a emotion I can't even try and put into words. It's horrible, but it just made us all more determined to go out there and tell these organizations stories, try and support them where we possibly can, and just try and make sure that this is what doesn't happen to our elephants and our wild dog and our pangolin and all the other species that are in trouble. And obviously, then also financial obstacles as well. Each crew member pays their own way, and the expeditions that I do are fundraising expeditions. So we try and raise the projects that we go and see. We try and raise a bit of money and support for them wherever we possibly can. But, things are tight all over the world at the moment. People are feeling the pinch, and, living expenses have got so expensive, and, everyone's needing help, and it all becomes very overwhelming. But as I say, you've got so many challenges, but when you see and you realize why you're doing this, it all makes it all worthwhile, and you kind of get over those obstacles and challenges. You find a way.
Let's get into that conservation part of your expeditions.
Yes.
What's happening to our wildlife, and tell us about some of the successes you've seen in the mitigation projects you've been a part of.
Sure. Okay. So there's a lot of, our first expedition was focusing on poaching, because currently we're losing 2 to 3 rhinos a day and 98 elephant, and I don't even know how many pangolin because of the wildlife trafficking trade. It's a $1 billion industry, and it's shocking that animals, wild dog, lions, they're killed for medicinal reasons. Some people, or a lot of them in Asia, believe that it's like a rhino horn, which is keratin, which is like your nails, cures hangovers, or it's become a status symbol. So if you have a group of people around, your boss around for dinner, and you're trying to impress them, you'll bring out a piece of rhino horn and you'll grind it into your glass of whiskey, and it's like you've made it in the world, or it's like, as I say, a status symbol. And a lot of the people, it does boil down to education, because a lot of people don't realize that elephants are being brutally murdered for their ivory. So you've got all these beautiful ornaments and trinkets that they think elephant's ivory is like teeth, that it falls out. But a lot of people don't understand that whole herds are actually killed just to get that piece of ivory for an ornament or a bracelet. That a rhino horn is brutally murdered because, you want that tiny piece of rhino horn on your mantelpiece so that you can impress your boss. And then, like I said just now, with the human-wildlife conflict, as the population's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, when you get humans and animals, wild animals, in close proximity, it often leads to conflict. A lot of them are opportunistic, like the lions or hyena. If there's a farmer with his goats in a little enclosed pen, for a lion to jump over there and kill 12 of his goats is nothing. But for the farmer, that's his livelihood. So you can understand why they want to get rid of the animals, and you can understand why, the animals are being opportunistic and going to go and eat people's crops or killing their animals. So it's a huge problem. But it's also, the last couple of years have also taught me the importance of education. A lot of what we do on these expeditions of mine, we've got like a little wildlife educational booklet, and to date we've handed out over 50,000 of them. And it's basically trying to get into the hearts and minds of the next generation. These children are in areas that are adjacent to these wildlife areas, and we need to educate them. We need to educate the communities. We need to help them and support them and teach them how to coexist and live in harmony with animals, because there are projects that are doing amazing work. You've got there are so many amazing projects out there, and I can't name all of them, but off the top of my head, there's a wonderful lady in Kenya called Dr. Lucy King, and she's discovered that elephants don't like bees. So she's now getting the farmers to put beehives around their crops. And
Oh, smart.
it's the most, it's so clever, because between each beehive, there's a piece of wire. And if the elephants are feeding and they're going towards your crop to go and damage it, because if you've been growing a crop for 6 months and an elephant gets in there, they'll damage your whole crop in a couple of hours. And so if they bump the beehive, it causes the beehive to swing, which obviously causes the bees to come out in attack mode. And literally within seconds, the whole herd is moved away, because they don't like bees, because they're scared they're going to get stung in their trunks or in their ears or around their eyes. And they will actually communicate with herds in the area, because they can communicate over kilometers or miles. And they will tell the other herds in the area, don't go over there because they're bees. And it's now this incredible mitigation project where farmers are getting 80% of their crop yield over a year because they're protected by the bees. You've also got now, very cleverly, you've got beekeepers. So the farmers are now becoming beekeepers. They're producing elephant-friendly honey, and they're getting a better yield on their crop because of the pollen. So that's such a clever project. Yeah, and it's using nature to protect nature. There's also another organization called African Parks. They've got 15 parks around Africa, and they basically go into contracts with governments. And it's normally the parks that have been poached out, overrun by humans, or, no animals left. And they literally take over, and they bring in, they've got a couple of pillars that they use. They bring in law enforcement. They've got anti-poaching units. They've got canine units, the dogs, and obviously the boots on the ground with the guys walking around, doing patrols. They do a lot of community development, job creating, education in the eco clubs. So they've started all these little eco clubs in the schools that are adjacent to these wildlife areas, just trying to reconnect children with nature. I mean, they live out there in nature, but why would you care about an elephant when it's going to come in and eat your dad's crop, or it's going to kill your goats or whatever? But it's just trying to educate them means and ways on how to deal with them, how to farm cleverly, instead of having separate farms scattered around you've got your farm here, Lisa's got her farm there, I've got my farm there. They're starting a thing in Botswana. It's called cluster farming, where they try and encourage the farmers to put their farms together, and then they put like a protective boundary around it. So it's working together. It's using smart things like that. And there's so many projects out there that are doing wonderful work. And that's why I'm trying to tell these stories out there to the world, to people that are interested in exploring and adventuring, but also wanting to do a little bit of ethical tourism, ethical travel, a little bit of finding out about what's going on, what projects are working, how can you support them, how can you tell their stories. So it's there's so many, I can't think of any more, but there are just so many incredible organizations out there that are doing amazing work, and their projects are working. It's not only just, they're not talking about them, you can actually see they're working, and it's fascinating to see some of the projects we went to go and see in 2016, and then last year with Emily we went back to a lot of the projects, and it's so wonderful to see how they've grown, how the communities are getting more involved, and how the education's grown, and it's good to see. It's a very good thing to see.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Progress. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Any specific conservationists in Africa stand out to you as a positive organization?
Yeah, there's Elephants and Bees, which is Dr. Lucy King. There's EcoExist there in Botswana, an amazing lady called Anna Songhurst. She's doing wonderful work in the communities up there. There's the most amazing lady called Maria Dickman. She's in Namibia. She's got a organization called Rare and Endangered Species, or abbreviated called REST. She is doing phenomenal work with pangolins. A lot of people don't even know what pangolins are, and it's the most trafficked animal in Africa. It's like a anteater. I don't know if you've ever seen a pangolin, but they're the sweetest little harmless animals. And in Asia, they're using them for pangolin soup. They use their scales, so they'll kill the animals just so that they can have the meat or eat their scales in a soup. So Maria's doing amazing work. There's another lady called Roxy Dankovitz in Zimbabwe. She's headed up the first elephant nursery, and she's just rehabilitated. Her first babies have gone through the runs, and now they've been released back into the wild. They're in the process. There's so many amazing ladies. Then you had the most amazing lady of them all, Daphne Sheldrick. She was with the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. She died last year as well. She was about 83, but she did a lot of leg work with hand rearing, well, not hand rearing, because obviously they try and rehabilitate them and release them as soon as possible, but with elephants. So she's probably saved over 300 orphaned elephants that were victims of poaching or drought or, circumstances. And she, as I say, she sadly passed away. But there are plenty of amazing organizations out there doing good work.
And any more details on what you have coming up in 2019?
Yes, I'm going to go and collar 5 elephants in Gillet, Mozambique in May. And then I've got 2 very exciting projects that I'm working with African parks. The one's in Liwa Plains, which is in western Zambia, and the other one is in Benguela Wetlands. They've got a project there for the birders, your keen birders. It's a shoeball stork that's endemic to that area, and it's a wetlands area, so they've got fishermen in the communities, but they're teaching the fishermen to coexist with the wetlands and nature. And they've got a wonderful project called the Shoeball Guardians, whereby if you're a fisherman and you come across a shoeball nest and their fledglings on the nest, you become a guardian of the fledglings until they leave the nest, and you basically hang up your fishing line for the season, and African parks compensate you money to protect and look after. So it's quite a lovely project. So I'm going to go and see that in towards the second part of the year. And then my first marine project in Bazaruta in Mozambique again. That'll only be 2020 though, where they've got their first, Africa Parks have got their first marine project, so we'll be doing something with them as well. But yeah, these little expeditions, the more you travel out there, the more amazing projects I find, the more I want to create expeditions around them so that more people from around the world can come do good with me. So it's a never-ending story. Yeah.
Yeah, nice work. So how can our listeners support what you're doing, Carla, and how can our female listeners learn more about getting involved in your expeditions?
Thanks, Chris. We've got on social media, so at Blue Sky Society. We're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. We're quite active about upcoming expeditions and also the humanitarian work that we're doing. And then also my website, I'm busy revamping that at the moment, but it'll probably be live in about the next week or so. My old one is still working, but it's www.blueskysociety.org. Or they can email me, Carla at blueskysociety.co.za if they're interested in finding out more information or just being kept informed when I create these expeditions. Because one of my best things is bringing women from all over the world. Some of the expeditions aren't only women, like the one that I'm going on now in May is open for men and women, even though majority are women that are coming. But it's just wonderful to see. You can get women from different ages. I mean, the last expedition, my youngest was 18, my oldest was 71, from different walks of life, from different countries. But when you get a group of women together with one common purpose or one common passion, it is so strong. And it's so inspiring to see how these ladies from all over the world, that when they get together, we're unstoppable. So it's good to see. But I encourage any of your listeners that are interested in getting involved, or they want to talk to me or hear a little bit more, they're welcome to contact me.
And how do we find you on social media?
It's at Blue Sky Society, so it's on Instagram and Facebook.
All the same.
At Blue Sky Society, yeah. So they can if they just search for Blue Sky Society, it's one word, they'll find us.
Very good. It's been a lot of fun. Anything that we've missed?
No, I think I feel like I've been talking the whole time. But yeah.
It's a lot of really good information.
Oh, thank you so much. And I really appreciate it, Chris and Lisa. It's important for the world to know that Africa is very safe to travel in, and to also know what's going on, because the ethical travel adventure overlander generation seems to be growing daily. People are wanting to go out there more and explore, and yeah, it's good to see. It's very good to see.
And while we're at it, we may as well do some good in the world.
Exactly. Give back.
Love it.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with some fun facts about you.
Me?
What keeps your co-driver occupied on long drives?
Are they the ones in charge of the music list?
Exactly. They get to listen. Yeah. They maps, Jeep, Garmin. That's always a challenge. I don't always trust the Garmin that's telling us where to go. So it's always old school maps. I've normally got 3 things going. So the person that drives with me normally sometimes gets my little spreadsheet of where we're going during the day. They get to phone people just to tell them that we're coming, make sure that everything's fine. So they do a little bit of admin work along the way. But it's, as I say, it's mostly the playlist though.
And do you play any musical instruments on the road or around the campfire at night?
I don't, hey. That is one of my biggest regrets in life, Lisa, is that I've always wanted to play the guitar and I've never got around to it. But I'm desperate for anyone out there that can play the guitar. I would love to have you on my expedition, because there's nothing that's sitting around a campfire having a little sing-along. It's very special.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
Coffee. I normally have to have 2 cups before I'm on the road.
Where's your favorite place to get coffee from?
I normally we normally just make it. I've got some expedition members that will only have plunger coffee, so they won't do in a tin coffee or in a bottle coffee. They have to have the freshly brewed coffee. So I like that kind of coffee. But if we do go past a place, it's always nice to stop but out in Africa, the brand names that we know so well, they're few and far between. So there's nothing like a home brewed pot or flask of coffee to keep you going on those long roads.
Seems like Ethiopia seems to have really good coffee, or coffee from Ethiopia.
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
they do. There's actually quite a lot with the place that we're going now. I'm very interested. I'll actually email you when I come back. Gorongosa in Mozambique. They've started a coffee plantation to help with deforestation. So instead of the guys cutting down trees, they planting coffee plantations amongst the trees to stop them as a form of income. So instead of them cutting down trees to sell as charcoal, So there are lots of, and even like in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, there's lots of tea plantations, coffee plantations. So it's, there is. And it's quite nice to taste the different flavors as you're going along.
So what's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day on the road for the group?
Gin and tonic through and through. I love
that
gin
more
and
often
tonic.
than anything else.
I always say to people that it's actually not about the conservation side of it. It's actually about finding the perfect bottle of gin in Africa, because every country's got their own brand. So we always have like a little bit of crew banter. So whenever we're in Malawi, we'll taste the Malawian gin, and then we'll go to Kenya and taste the Kenyan gin. And it's just quite fun.
That's great. Carla, any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
No, I just want to say to people that if you've got a passion for travel, I was actually chatting to 2 friends about a couple of days ago, and they were like, I can't wait till my kids leave home because then we're going to go and travel. And I just said to them, don't keep putting things off. If you want to go and travel and explore, you can't stop it because you've got to wait for your kids to grow up, to leave the house so that you go and travel. We've got such a beautiful world out there. There's so many amazing places And the more you get into it, the more you realize how much there is to see. And like I said earlier, it's the best school you will ever go to in your entire life is going on an overland or an expedition. So I just say to all your listeners, I mean, obviously they're all passionate about traveling, but the more you can do, the better. I think it makes us better people, more mindful.
That's great.
Carla, thank you so much for your time. We are humbled that you've given us such an amazing look into your world, experiences, and knowledge. And safe travels and adventures to you, and we hope to catch up with you again in the future.
I would absolutely love that. I'd love to give you some feedback of our Mozambique collaring experience, and we'll also know more about what's happening in Zambia. But thank you so much, Chris and Lisa, and your listeners for chatting to me and hearing my story. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, all good from South Africa here. It's dark now at the moment and it's cooled down. So
Very good. All right, Carla,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Cheers. You too. Bye-bye.
I feel like we should be listening to some kind of African safari sounds or something.
I'm having a hard time understanding why people are still stumped that women can do something like an overland expedition, change a tire, or cross a border without a man holding their hand.
Well, now hear me out on this one. Not all women can. Just like not all men, especially in Portland, can. There's many of them that can't even change a tire. It takes a strong woman, much like Carla, much like yourself, much like the women that go on these expeditions. And I think it's awesome.
Well, just hearing her passion talking about what she does and where she gets to go with these people,
Yeah, that's super, super great.
I just want to go tomorrow.
I think we learned more about elephants and all those other critters from Carla than we previously knew.
Yeah.
That was like a ton of really educational, really great information and inspiring. Lisa, how would you like to open your tent in the morning and see the lion tracks circling it?
My jaw would drop and
You'd be speechless
speechless. Safe to say.
and need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I might have peed my pants by then. I'd strongly recommend looking into an expedition with Carla.
Yeah, I think it would be amazing. I'm not sure if there's still spots open for her Mozambique expedition. That is in May. It's actually for men and women from the 9th through the 22nd. So if you can get to South Africa, number one, by the 9th of May or before, which is like in just a few weeks, so that's a pretty short time, get in contact with Carla ASAP. You can find the link in our show notes page. She also has 2 other events in 2019, so if you're interested in those, be sure and visit the Blue Sky Society. Get in contact with Carla to learn more about how you can support her humanitarian efforts.
At a minimum, still visit the show notes page for info and direct links to all the resources, conservation projects, and a ton of stuff.
Carla, thank you so much for your time and sharing your stories, your experiences, and a ton of knowledge. Just the whole idea of what you're doing in South Africa with animal conservation. Hats off to you. You're doing a great job. Keep up what you're doing.
So I really like the Bee Project.
Oh, the bees. What was it called?
Elephants and Bees.
Elephants and Bees.
Or Bees and Elephants.
Yeah. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I'd fit right in.
You would.
I would, because we've got bees.
Yep, we got bees. You like the bees.
Yes.
I like the birds.
Okay, different podcast.
Oh, whoops.
And then baby elephants. I want to see baby elephants to rehabilitate them back in the wild. It's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghteoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Blue Sky Society episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you.
Yep, and send your questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghtoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. If you have an Amazon Echo, remember to tell Alexa, play the GHT Overland podcast. We'd love it if you would connect with us on social media at GHT Overland. Be sure to share this episode with your friends who enjoy travel off the beaten path. Overland travel is all about meeting new friends, seeing the most amazing places on earth, and of course, new food and new drinks, like new gin in different parts of the world.
Ooh, yes.
For GNTs.
Do you have a favorite drink or food recipe for overlanding? We'd love to feature it and you. Send them to ghtOverlandpodcast@gmail.com. Before you race off, it would mean the world to us if you'd rate and review the podcast. Give GHT Overland a little iTunes love so we can reach as many overlanders as possible. Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for a brand new episode of the GHT Overland podcast. Bye.